Okay, so we got a new day out here. We got the sun shining. I got the dash out last night, and that's where I left off. So, like I said then, the next thing that we need to do is actually our wiring. So, I've got the stereo here. The wiring is really straightforward. So, we've got one main harness here. This one plugs into the back of the head unit, just like that. Then we have two other little bundles. This bundle right here is for your power wires and your ground. These two little blue ones, just like I did with the RCA cables and the auxiliary cables on the back of the head unit. There's a solid blue one and then a blue with a white stripe. The solid blue wire is for power antenna. I don't have a power antenna. I'm not going to install a power antenna. And then the blue with the white stripe is your remote amp turn on. It's basically a signal wire when your head unit turns on, then your amplifier turns on. Like I said, I bundled up those RCA cables. I'm not using an amplifier, so I don't want to cut them. So I just kind of bundled them up like that. The only other wires here that I'm using, we have a 12 volt. The yellow is 12 volt constant. The red is 12 volt switched. And then the black is, of course, ground. That's one little bundle. This bundle here, just speaker wires. So the purple is for the right side, gray for the front right, white front left, green rear left. So simple speaker wires. All of those. So we've got this main bundle plugged into the back there. These two bundles right here simply plug in to the back here, and I'm going to make sure I get these in the right locations. Plug in like that, and the speaker wire bundle plugs in like that, and now we're ready to do our wiring. So I'm going to mount this in the dash and then get started on the wiring. I'll try and show you as much as I can. It's pretty cramped under there, but I'll get the GoPro and try and set that up, clamp that in place, and try and get as much of the wiring as I can. But like I said, it's really straightforward. We just have the 4 speaker wires, 12 volt constant, 12 volt switch, and a ground, and that's about it. And it's pretty well spelled out in the instructions as well. So let's get going on this. So I've routed my lines and I've wired up at least my power wires. The ground cable, the 12 volt switched, and the 12 volt constant. So I still need to do the speaker wires, which are right under there. But I'm going to show you real quick a trick that I've learned over the years to solder connections when you're not working on a workbench. So let me get the camera set up and I'll show you that. Okay, let me show you my little under the dash soldering trick. And the key to it is one of these little spring-loaded pony clamps. Now I've pulled the little rubber isolators off the tips there. Here's my soldering iron. Now it's all hot. It's been plugged in for a little while now, so we got to be careful. So we just take our little pony clamps, we try and clamp the wires to the end of the soldering iron and try and solder the wires. Now of course you got to use metal pony clamps here. The problem is they're going to suck up some of the heat, so this could take a minute. There we go. Okay. Check. Yeah, that's a good connection. It's certainly not as clean as if you did it on a workbench, but for doing under the dash wiring where you can't really reach it, it's a pretty alright method. So let me reach up Got some heat shrink here. Slide that down and over it, and then we're about finished with this part of the wiring. Okay, so I've started working on the speaker wiring. I'm finished up doing all the power wiring to the head unit. And since the speaker connection comes out and nothing's hardwired to the truck like it is for the power connections, I figured it would just be a lot easier to do this over here on a sawhorse with a plate of steel here. You'll remember this. This was our jig that we used to build those new control arms a little while back. So I'm just getting everything kind of set up here. So this is going to be, this is the white wire. So this is front left. I've already done front right. Remember, the only speakers that I have in the truck right now are the ones in the dash, the front speakers. Now I am, like I said, going to buy the kick panel speakers, and I've actually already cut several lengths of speaker wire, and I'm going to go ahead and solder them to the connector here, to the little pigtails we have coming out of the connector, to run to both corners of the truck. So, and then when I get the speakers in, then I'll have wires that are already run all the way down there, and then all I have to do is connect them to the speakers. Okay, so the wiring is 99% finished up. Really all I have to do is put a few more zip ties on there, kind of bundle up the wires and clean it up under the dash. But the wiring is pretty much finished. I've even routed some speaker wires over here to each side of the cab for when I install the kick panel speakers that will be going down here. And I don't have those yet. I will make a separate video for the kick panel speakers. And when that's done, I will pop a link, a little card up there in the corner of the screen to link you over to those videos. Likewise, over there on the passenger side of the truck, you can see the little wire draping down there, the speaker wire. So that's pretty much finished. There's one other step here for mounting the radio that we need to take, and that is, in the kit they include this little, I'm going to call it a strut rod, a support. So I'm going to put that in. There's not much deflection to the radio. I'm going to reach behind here and kind of wiggle it a little bit. I'm not sure how well that's showing up on video, but there's just a little bit of wiggle. That strut rod may not be necessary, but it is in the kit, and I've kind of poked my head under there, and I've got a pretty good place to put it, so it's not going to be a difficult installation. So let me show you what I'm going to do with this strut rod, and then we'll go ahead and put it in. So here's the little strut rod. It's a very thin piece of steel. They've got some holes and some slots drilled into this. I haven't gauged this material. If I had to guess, I would say it's in the 18 to 20 gauge range, which would be 40 to 50 thousandths thick, so it's really not very thick. Ideally, I would like to use this in a tension configuration, meaning, say, bolted here at the top, bolted down here to the radio, and the force is actually pulling on this because of how thin this material is. I can't really do that. I've been holding this up behind the radio in the dash. Unless I drill a hole into my plastic defrost duct here, using this in a tension configuration really won't work, because I don't want to drill a hole into the defrost duct. So I've been under the truck, under the dash, and I found there's an existing factory hole down here that lines up pretty well with the radio. It's not a straight shot. The strut rod's not going to be perpendicular like that. It's going to be canted just a touch. But I showed you earlier, you know, I wiggled the radio. There's not much movement back there. And putting this strut piece in a tension, or I'm sorry, a compression configuration, it's so thin I was worried that it could deflect like that. But like I said, there's not a whole lot of movement to the radio in the dash. The bolts that are holding it in currently seem to be doing a pretty good job. This is just going to add a little bit of structure, and I think by putting this in a compression configuration, that we're going to have minimal, if any, deflection, and it will add just a little bit of support to the radio. So I'm gonna have to do a couple of things here. We're gonna have to make a few bends. I may even cut it a little bit shorter. I'm definitely gonna have to drill out at least one of these holes. This is the fastener that I have. This was just laying on my toolbox. This is actually left over from, I bought this specifically for the radiator support, upper radiator support project that I did a while ago. And I bought 3 of these, and I actually used 2 of them because these were too short. I had to go back and buy 3 more that were longer. This is 1/2 inch long. I had to go buy 3/4 inch for the radiator support project, but I did end up using 2 of these for the control arm project when I had to fabricate new upper control arms for this truck. It's a 1/4 inch socket cap bolt. It's a 1/2 inch long. Like I said, 1/4 inch, 20 threads per inch, so coarse thread. Got a couple washers there, and the nut. Everything here is stainless. I might replace this in the future with, say, a button head screw that's a little bit more low profile, but for now this will work just fine. But I've got, like I said, I have to drill out one of these holes to fit it over this bolt. So I'll go drill this out, and we'll get this strut rod mounted to the radio. So I got that little strut rod installed, and I'm going to throw up some still pictures here because I'm kind of a fat guy, and it was kind of difficult to get the camera under the dash with me trying to show you this work. So I'm going to throw up still pictures here. Like I said, I had to drill out one hole to 1/4 inch to fit that little 1/4 inch fastener that I had. I had to put just a slight bend into the bottom of that to match the angle of the dash. And then the radio comes with a small stud that gets threaded into the back of the unit, and then it has basically a little nut on there. So you tighten the nut down, which tightens the little stud to the radio, and then it also in the kit were some lock washers and some other nuts that you use to tighten the strut rod to the back of the radio. So it was pretty quick and easy. It took me about 10 minutes to put that in. So that's finished up. I think the installation of the radio into the truck itself is finished. There's at least one more thing we need to deal with, and that is this little chrome trim ring that goes around the face of the radio. Now, the bezel, if you remember, this trim ring was just a little snug going into the plastic bezel. So I'm going to probably take a file and maybe some sandpaper, a light filing and a light sanding around the inside edge of the opening for the radio in the bezel to get this trim ring to fit in there a little bit better, because without it the gap is a little bit too much, so this will make it look a little bit cleaner. So let's go work on that.